Hey guys, today's video is making homemade sushi, which starts with sushi rice. Some sushi rice will tell you to soak it first before you cook it. I just go by whatever package directions on the particular kind of sushi rice I happen to have at the time. So I've only made it a few times. I'm not an expert on this, but this brand does not say to soak the rice. So I'm just gonna go by the package instructions, which is measuring 2 cups of rice. It uses 1 1/4 cup water for each cup of rice. So I'm gonna rinse this really good until the water runs clear, and then just put it in a saucepan with 2 1/2 cups of water. So 1 1/4 per cup times 2 cups of rice, 2 1/2 cups of water. And once you bring this to the boil, it will just lower the heat and simmer for 20 minutes until the rice is done. When the water just barely starts to come to a boil, just lower the heat down to a simmer, cover the pot with the lid, and set your timer for 20 minutes. Meanwhile, I'm just gonna start the sushi rice marinade, I guess you would call it. It's just rice vinegar, sugar, and salt, and those are the 3 things that you add to the sushi rice to give it flavor and make it sticky. You can add sesame seeds to the rice. I don't have any, so I might add a splash of sesame oil to the mixture just to give that sesame taste to the rice. I'm just following the package directions. So for 2 cups of rice, it's 5 tablespoons rice vinegar, 1 tablespoon sugar, and 1 teaspoon salt. Now this next part is optional because you can put whatever you want inside your sushi rolls. I'm using smoked salmon, cucumber, and avocado today. I'm gonna marinate the smoked salmon. I mean, it has enough flavor on its own. You don't really have to do this part, but I like to kind of marinate it to make it less fishy tasting. So I put the smoked salmon in a bowl and I squeeze the juice of 1 lemon, and I put a little bit of rice vinegar, and then a little splash of sesame oil and a little splash of soy sauce, and mix it all up with the salmon and just cover it up and keep it in the fridge until I'm ready to start assembling my sushi. And that just gives a little bit extra flavor to the sushi roll. And of course, you could use any seafood you want. If you're brave enough to do this with raw fish or have the good enough quality sushi grade fish, you can definitely do that. I haven't experimented with that myself. I stick with the smoked salmon or crab meat or shrimp, like something that's safe and cooked for homemade sushi. So the rice is still cooking, so this part is not sushi related at all, but while you're still waiting for the rice and you've already got your salmon marinating, you've got your vinegar ready, just make yourself a little iced coffee, have a little treat. I'm using this tiramisu flavored syrup that I got for my birthday, almond milk, ice, and coffee. Just having a little bit because I've already had a lot of coffee today, but just a little, you know, something to get the rest of the sushi done. Now that the rice is done and it's been sitting 10 minutes after it finished, I'm pouring that rice vinegar, sugar, and salt, and sesame oil mixture into the rice and just mix it up really well. I just mix it right here in the pot, but then you do want the rice to cool off significantly before you start rolling the sushi, and keeping it in this stainless steel pot is gonna stay hot for a very long time. So after I mix all the vinegar, sugar, and salt in with the rice, I'm gonna put it in the glass pan and spread it out and let it cool off. It'll cool down faster that way, and you can kind of like press the rice together to get it nice and firm and sticky so it's easier to work with later. Just dump it in here, spread it out, use a little plastic spatula to smooth it out, and once you're done with that, just let it chill for I didn't really time it, maybe 30 minutes or so in the fridge or freezer. I put mine in the freezer to cool down faster, just until it feels cool enough to the touch. So I'm gonna show you a few rolls rolled by hand without using any sushi making kit or even a bamboo mat. This is just a sheet of seaweed on a piece of plastic wrap, and just put a nice even layer of rice down on the seaweed. You want it to completely cover the seaweed. This is gonna be one where we press the rice down and then flip it over before we fill it and roll it so that the rice is on the outside of the roll. It's a little bit more challenging than having the seaweed on the outside of the roll, but it does look a little bit nicer and it looks more like what you would get in a sushi restaurant. So we're gonna do one that way. We'll do two that way actually, and then I'll show you one with the seaweed on the outside, and I'll show you one with a kit that I do have for sushi making. If you do have a mold or a kit that makes things a little bit easier, but it's actually turns out almost the same as the handmade does. You just have to be a little bit more diligent in doing a hand rolled one to get the rice firmly packed down and nice and sticky. And then the moment of truth comes when you try to flip this over to the other side onto the saran wrap. If it stays together and you can flip it face down, then I call it a success. So here we go, the moment of truth. I'm clearly nervous here. Just give it another good pat down before I try to flip it around. And there we go. We did it. And then on this side, you're gonna put any of your fillings that you want. Like I said, I'm gonna do smoked salmon, avocado, and cucumber in mine. Some other good things you can put in here are spicy tuna. You can use crab meat, shrimp, obviously any seafood that you like, or any veggies really, but this is a good combination that I like: smoked salmon, avocado, and cucumber. And actually, I think I want to put the filling a little bit, scoot it more towards the edge of the seaweed so that it's easier to roll. And just kind of grab the plastic wrap from underneath and use that to help you roll so that you don't have the rice stick to your hands or your gloves, and just roll it like a burrito, I guess. It's like sushi burrito. This is coming out kind of big. I think I made the rice a little bit thick, so I'll try putting a little bit less rice on the next one. But you want to just kind of firmly pack it as you go and roll it slowly, and use the plastic to help you move it so that so the rice doesn't stick to your hands or fall off of it. And just basically do that, and just packing it down to make sure the rice stays sticky. And we're gonna move on to the next roll. So I did decide to use a little bit thinner layer of rice this time, just because the other one came out like a pretty fat roll, and I have a feeling when I slice it later that some of the rice is gonna fall off because it was a thick layer of rice. So I'll just use a little bit less on this one, but I'm gonna follow the same steps, so I'll just speed this one up and not walk you through it because it'll be the same as the last one. So for this one, I'm gonna keep the seaweed on the outside. It's gonna begin the same way with a thin layer of rice pressed down all the way across the seaweed. And then the only difference is I'm gonna put the filling right on top of the rice on this side without flipping it rice side down, and then just roll it with the seaweed on the outside. It'll look a little bit different. It is easier to slice through rolls like this because you're slicing through the seaweed and not slicing through the really sticky rice, which can stick to the knife as you're cutting it. So you'll see later when I slice through these, this one probably will slice a bit easier and stay together a bit better. So it's really just personal preference. It's gonna taste the same, whichever way is easier for you to roll, or you think looks the nicest, or makes you feel the most like you're at a sushi restaurant, whatever your goal is. You can do it either way. And then I will show you one using a mold that I have for a heart shape sushi. It comes with like round, square, and heart shape. I'll do the next one in a heart shape just so you can see the difference, but that one also has the seaweed on the outside because the way that you use that mold, it requires the seaweed to be the outer layer. And I like to dab just a little bit of water on the seaweed before I do this one, just because the seaweed is kind of papery and can crack easily, and the way that it goes into this mold, if it's too stiff, it will just break into pieces instead of sitting in the mold. So I wet the seaweed just a tiny bit. You don't want it super wet or it'll get sticky and stick to the inside of this tray. So I just do a tiny bit of water so that the seaweed doesn't crack. And then you start with putting a layer of rice at the bottom. Again, this is going to be the heart-shaped mold, so the base of it is like a triangle shape, and then the top of it will give it the heart shape. It does come with a round one and a square one, so you could use that. I can link that kit for you guys. That's something I got for my birthday last year. And there are other sushi making kits that come with like the bamboo mat for you to roll the rolls by hand, like I did in the previous rolls. But I think this one is really cool because it just lets you firmly pack the rice, and it has this thing. This is the topper that makes it heart shaped, but on the back side of it, there's like a little rectangular part that you push down into the rice. This packs the rice really tightly, and it makes like a divot inside of the rice that gives you a little groove to fill in, to put your fillings in it. And that keeps the filling from spilling out the sides of the roll. And again, it keeps the rice really packed down tightly. So you just fill this middle portion, the little groove that you made, in with your fillings. It is a little bit skinny, so like I personally like to have a lot more filling inside my roll than the size of the groove that this makes. But you don't have to completely stick with it if you just mostly get stuff in that groove and just tuck it down, and then you're going to cover this with another layer of rice anyway, so you can put a little bit more filling in there than what the groove portion suggests that you would put in there. And then it's just topped with, like I said, another pretty thick layer of rice, just enough to cover everything and make sure that there's no fillings peeking out the top of the roll. And then you just fold the seaweed down. I do wet the seaweed corners on the inside where they're going to overlap each other so that it stays stuck down. And then to press that rice more firmly down and to get that heart shape, or if you use the round topper or square topper to get the perfect shape that you want, you just press that down. I give it a couple of good firm presses down. And then the cool thing about this mold is that it has the pre-marked slots that tell you exactly where to slice through to get perfect even slices. And you just tip this over onto a plate to get your roll out, and it's already sliced and heart shaped. I could have probably packed the rice in a little tighter because it's a little bit loose, but it is not too shabby. So I'm bringing back my hand-rolled ones since they did not have a handy-dandy mold that helped me slice it into perfect slices. I'm just gonna freehand it. I'm gonna start with the one that has the seaweed on the outside. Like I said, this will be the easiest one, and I'll show you how this one looks. I'm gonna put it on the same plate as the heart-shaped ones that I did from the mold, and you can kind of see the difference. I actually think my hand-rolled ones were a little bit more tightly packed, and I could have probably just pressed a little harder in the heart-shaped one to get a more perfect shape, because I've done them before in the heart shape and they did come out a little bit more shaped and tighter packed rice. So I don't think it's the mold's fault. I think maybe I didn't put enough rice in it or press it hard enough. Now these are going to be a little bit harder to slice. If you wet the knife a little bit before you start slicing through, it does help keep the rice from sticking. I suppose you could use like oil on the knife. I just used a little bit of water, and that seems to do the trick of keeping the rice from sticking to the knife. I'm going to just slice these and lay these out on this plate all together. So there's homemade sushi 3 different ways. You've got seaweed on the outside rolled by hand, seaweed on the outside made in the mold, and you've got rice on the outside rolled by hand. Some look prettier than others. You can top them with sesame seeds, sriracha. I have a couple little toppings here that I'm going to use on mine. We made some pot stickers just from a box, packaged pot stickers as an appetizer, and we've got wasabi, pickled ginger, soy sauce, ready to chow down on a traditional restaurant style sushi dinner. I guess I don't want to call it traditional because it's my own made up sushi, but it's pretty legit. It's pretty sushi restaurant like. I hope you give it a try at home and let me know how it turns out.